introduction, but you got to be careful about introductions or what people say. It's like one guy came up to my old friend Harry Brown one time and said to him, "Aren't you the guy that made $1 million buying gold in London?" And Harry said, "Well, kind of. It wasn't London, it was Zurich. And it wasn't gold, it was silver. And it wasn't buying, it was selling. And it wasn't $1 million, it was only 100,000. And it wasn't me, it was my brother. And he didn't make it, he lost it." But anyway, that was close enough. Now, what I'm going to talk about is my adventures trying to overthrow third world governments. And it's true. And I've never given a speech on this subject before, ever. Talked to buddies about it over beers and stuff like that, but never given a speech about this, because mostly I speak to investors and Republicans, and they don't want to hear about this stuff. But I thought that you guys were wild and woolly enough that it might suit. Okay, overthrowing third world countries. Americans have a long history of doing this type of thing. I mean, going back to at least the days of William Walker before the Civil War, who actually led a private army and took over Nicaragua for a period of time. So this is nothing new. I got interested in it when Mike Oliver, if any of you know who he is or was, he might be dead now, tried to take over Abaco, which was an island in the Bahamas when they were going independent. And they were a British colony becoming independent. So due to the military background of most of these coup d'etat type things, you always run into a bunch of mercenaries in this business. Taking over countries is really big in the mercenary community. They like this kind of stuff for obvious reasons. And because of Oliver, I got involved too late to do anything in Abaco, but I met Colin Mitchell, a famous British mercenary who was previously best known as the hero of Aden, fighting the Fuzzy Wuzzies in Yemen, and spent more time with Colin Mitchell, known as Mad Mitch, another story, but that's irrelevant to this. But you always meet these fun guys. And then the next thing I got involved in around what Oliver was doing was the Republic of Minerva. Maybe some of you heard of that. And closest I got was with my old buddy Bob Kephart, and Minerva actually minted some coins. There were reefs in the Pacific that were above water at low tide. And Oliver tried to plant a flag there, but the 300-pound king of Tonga kicked him off. And then the next one was the Republic of Nagriamel, which was the island, the big northern island in Vanuatu called Santos. And I followed up more on that. That was with a tribal chief named Jimmy Moley Stevens. And anyway, those things were, from my point of view, all kind of false starts. So I said, well, wait a minute, what am I doing? Kind of following in Mike Oliver's tailwinds. And I could tell you stories about Mike and why all the deals he got involved in blew up. Mike is a libertarian, not a very good one, but one thing he shares with all most libertarians, is he's totally and utterly incompetent. And the best stories to tell about him are his incompetence in blowing these things up. But I'm not going to go into that. So, what did I decide to do? Well, I'm going to tell you why and exactly how I got into this in a while, but I'm going to tell you a couple of the adventures that I've had. Turns out, in putting this little talk together, I had to dig into my memory banks and see how many countries have I tried this kind of stunt on to a greater or a lesser degree. And believe it or not, it turns out to be 15, not counting these first 3 I just mentioned. That's a pretty good total. I don't know, where shall I start? I could start with Paraguay. There's a country that nobody goes to. I mean, the first time I went there, I spent a day or more socializing with the boys. You don't want to know who the boys from Brazil are. Did you see the movie? Maybe not. Okay, forget about it. Anyway, the place was run by the longest-lived dictator in Latin American history, Alfredo Stroessner. And he was dead. Well, not the first time I went there. He was well alive. But the second time I came back there, I got to spend a day with a man known as the Monte Negro, the black monk, who was his financial guy, ran everything behind the scenes for him. And I pitched him on the deal that I'm going to tell you about. But he wasn't interested. 2 reasons. One, Stroessner was dead, so he was out of power, and 2, he'd already stolen so much money that he just didn't want to do anything. And another more recent one, do you remember a few years ago when the Central African Republic was in the news? All these natives are hacking themselves up with machetes and all that type of thing, type of stuff they do in Central Africa from time to time. So, how did this happen? I got an introduction to the chief of police of Central African Republic, and I flew to Paris, and I met him in Paris, where he's got this $2,000 a night suite, which all African bigwigs, they always treat themselves to this type of stuff. And we talked about all this stuff, and and I was going to fly down to Bangui, the capital, from Paris, about the only place you can get there, except that's exactly when, and meet the president and do all this, because I pitched the chief of police, who was the president's best buddy. Incidentally, the chief of the police or the head of the army is almost always the best buddy of these dictators for obvious reasons. But I didn't go because it was exactly then that thousands of natives overran the airport in Bangui, where there were UN white helmets that would keep them from getting hacked up with machetes. So that was another start and stop thing. Then I've just had some fun times, like in Mozambique. I got to have dinner with Chissano, who was the head of the Frelimo, but he wasn't interested, and his English wasn't that good. And in Namibia, I had lunch with Sam Nujoma, whose English was quite good and was a very entertaining guy, but we just couldn't get into it. In Cuba, I went there with about a dozen guys in the mining business, and at a Casa Particular that we'd rented, who shows up but Fidel himself that evening with his entourage. And this is how you make stupid mistakes. So, like everybody, it's a little group, I'm gathered around Fidel listening to him rap in Spanish. He speaks English quite well, but for lots of reasons he speaks Spanish. So I'm listening and it's being translated. And, what I should have been doing, sitting over in a corner, was a guy named Carlos Laje, who was one of the next generation of guys, about, I don't know, probably about 30 years younger than Fidel. There were 3 of them that were going to take over at that time, Cuba after he. So idiotically, I don't know, I didn't know. I'm listening to Fidel rap just total bullshit, and I could have been over there talking to Laje, who spoke perfect English, and would have loved to have heard my pitch. I'll tell you what the pitch I tell these guys was. So another blown opportunity. Then a few years ago also, I went to Mauritania, because I had an introduction to some people there. And that was interesting, because Mauritania, the best place for this kind of adventure is always a military dictatorship, for a lot of reasons. And Mauritania was. That's the good news. Bad news is it's a Muslim country, and a really backward Muslim country. Do you know that the last country in the world to abolish slavery was Mauritania? And you'll never guess, when did they officially abolish slavery? Anybody know? Here's some trivia. No, 1985. But that's academic, because they still have slaves there today. Met lots of them, went to interesting parties, always humming Midnight at the Oasis to myself when we went out to the desert for camel's milk. Really interesting, but it didn't go anywhere. Another false start. Zimbabwe. Now, I was introduced I've spent more time in Rhodesia than any other African country, I think, lots of times. And the last time I was there, about 2 years ago, I spent a lot of time, not a little, a lot. Had dinner at his house with Gideon Gono. Who here knows who Gideon Gono is? Nobody knows. Anybody ever seen a Zimbabwe $100 trillion bill? Okay, that is Gideon Gono's signature on it. He was the head of the central bank when Comrade Mugabe was in office, before Comrade Mugabe died. And he's a charming guy. Now you think this guy's got to be a brain-dead idiot printing a $100 trillion bill. No, he's not. On the contrary, he gave me a typewritten manuscript that he'd given a copy to Comrade Mugabe, who's, as you know, joined the ranks of the departed, about why Zimbabwe should have a gold dollar. Serious, I got it. And he was the same guy that printed up the $100 trillion bill, which is actually a nice piece of artwork. It's got the things in it, like the US currency and everything. So, I don't know how much money Gideon's stolen, but believe me, he doesn't have to be a central banker anymore at this point. And of course, the military are running that. When I was there, I met everybody in that country, everybody. I was on television, did the usual thing. The mistake I made, and sometimes these things are just not as well organized as you like, is I didn't spend time getting to know the generals. Because when chaos comes, the generals always take over. So, all right, another false start. Maybe I'll go back to Zimbabwe again someday. Maybe not. But Africa's hopeless, just in case you were wondering for a bottom line. Vanuatu, mentioned that earlier in the context of Nagri Amel, okay? That failed venture. All right, so I had an introduction to the previous president, not the current, but the previous. I met everybody in that country. But so I took the previous president out to dinner, and this is a guy with about, I'd say, maybe a fourth grade education, probably an IQ of about 85, I'm guessing. Well, what's going to happen to these beautiful islands? Vanuatu, the old New Hebrides, has about 85 major islands, about 160 language groups, very primitive. They still exist. They got the big Nambas and the little Nambas running around, and they got the bungee jumpers, and they got the cargo cult. This is all still there. None of it's changed. Pretty backward. Anyway, a lot of fun, waste of time, spending time in the Nacamel bars. The collateral interest of this kind of a hobby, and this is just a hobby. It's been a hobby of mine, like for 30 years, has made it worthwhile. Went to the Cameroon. Was going to see Paul Biya, who's about the longest serving dictator in Africa. Didn't get to see him. Met some of his officials, but it's pointless talking to officials just under the president. Why? Because if anything new is adopted, the guys under the president are the ones that do all the stealing. Absolutely. Not so much the president himself, well, they do too, but the guys under him. So they don't want to see any change. So we drove in a Land Rover or something from the commercial capital on the coast to the political capital in the interior, watching all the forests being logged illegally in giant logging trucks on this dirt road that could have killed us a number of times. So anyway, I get to the Intercontinental Hotel there and, meet the manager. He thought it was unusual that a North American was staying at his hotel. It's not usual in the Cameroon, which is having a civil war right now, incidentally, between basically the French and English-speaking parts. It's not a real country. So I tell him the deal that I was going to pitch to Bia if I got together with them. And you know what he said? I thought it was funny. He said, "Remind me not to get in a car with you." I don't know if you know what his implication was or not. You guys probably don't think in these terms. Okay, anyway. So how did I get into having all these crazy adventures? How did it start? Actually, I kind of told you how it started, but specifically, what was the first adventure I had? Well, I was taking a trip, just seeing a whole bunch of Caribbean islands. And so I went to Dominica, which is a garden island, very pretty. And what I did is what I always did in those days. I don't do it anymore. Go to my hotel room, open up the yellow pages, go to lawyers and real estate agents, and start dialing. Why? Because lawyers have all the power, the political connections. They know everything in these countries. Well, everywhere, frankly. And there aren't too many of them in these countries. And real estate agents, same thing. So anyway, I met with this one guy. We got along very well. And he said, Mr. Casey, you should meet my brother, Kenny. He's the head of the Industrial Development Bank. This is a country with 80,000 people. There's no industry there, but they got an industrial development bank. Okay, I said, this will be a fun dinner. So he sets it up with me that night. And there we are, having dinner, blah, 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 blah. I hadn't hatched a plan yet, incidentally. I just wanted to meet him and see if I could figure something out. And by God, I did. And he's a little suspicious. He figured I was an Uhuru jumper. Some white guy there that, has no obvious whatever. So he's suspicious. But then it popped into my mind, because this wasn't so long after the movie Rollerball came out. And I thought, I didn't tell him this, but in the back of my mind was, you know what? Since reality follows fiction, what this place needs to jumpstart it is a rollerball stadium. And then I thought, well, how do you get that going? And then I thought, wait a minute. This country's got hundreds of beautiful mountaintops. It's all crown land. Nothing's happening there. So I said to him, Mr. Eileen, what we ought to do is take one of these mountaintops, take a few hundred hectares, and put it in a corporation. And then we'll sell shares in the corporation for like $50,000 for a share. And what do you get for that? Nobody wants that jungle land. But you can be an economic citizen, and we'll give them passports, because at that time it was basically South Africans and Hong Kong people that were desperate for a good travel document. So I said, I know that we can sell 50,000 of these. I know that we can sell 1,000 of them easily. And I would have been right. And so he's doing the math, $50,000 times 1,000. He's the director of the Industrial Development Bank. He can do this kind of arithmetic. It's $50 million. This is at exactly the same time that Reagan was bribing Eugenia Charles, who was the president of the country, with $1 million to be the head of the Grenada invasion force. Okay? So $50 million, I mean, he'd be a hero. And so he liked that idea. And I said, but wait, there's more we can do, because $50 million is a lot, but now we got a corporation with a physical asset and a bunch of cash. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take it public in New York, London, and Tokyo. And maybe we'll take it public at $10 a share, and we'll raise $1 billion. And people that are of significant help to the company will get warrants at maybe $0.01 a share. Well, I had a background in the mining stock business. This is the way the game is played. And I said, somebody like you, for instance, might get 100,000 warrants at $0.01. And he's thinking, it comes out at $10. Once again, I'm hoping he can do this higher math, and he could. And said, yes, a person such as yourself. So we talked about it a little bit more, and after a while, there's a pause. And he looks at me and he says, you know, Mr. Casey, I want you to tell me more about those warrants. So, talked another 10 minutes. He got up, went over to the phone, called Mrs. Charles, and set up an appointment for me with her the next day. It's that easy to do this stuff in these dog shit countries. So, okay, what happened? Turns out that her father was deathly ill and he died later that night. I got a call, in the wee hours saying had to cancel the appointment because Mrs. Charles was going to be involved in a Caribbean family funeral for several days. And like an idiot, because this is my first real test, my first real experiment, the first one. I got on the plane the next morning and left. I should have camped out there because the economic passport business has turned out huge. Anyway, I wasn't really serious then. I was just having a good time, that's all. Looking to amuse myself. So what was the next thing that happened that was of interest along these lines? Well, it was in the Republic of Ciskei. Now, almost nobody's heard of Ciskei, but when South Africa was changing government from white to black, along the way there were, I think there were 7 so-called Bantustans that were set up, and Ciskei was one of the 7. It's Transkei, Bophuthatswana, and I forget the names of the other ones. So I got an introduction to Brigadier Upagauzo, who was the president of Ciskei. And it was really interesting, because I walked into the government building, and there's, soldiers with submachine guns standing at the entrance. I walked down this long, dark hallway. Nothing more dangerous than a young African soldier with a submachine gun, I promise you. But so I walked down there. I said, this is weird and interesting, to his office, and he's got a desk the size of an aircraft carrier, and he's hiding in back of it like a little rat. And so we started talking, and I gave him the pitch. And what was the pitch that I give to these guys? I'd worked it out by then. I said, look, I have a plan, and use that in all these other things I mentioned earlier. I mentioned earlier in my speech, but later in time than this. And the pitch is basically this. I have a plan that will do 3 things for you. It'll make you legitimately rich. Got to emphasize legitimately, because they know they can't steal money like Marcos and Mugabe and Mobutu and those guys did. I mean, those days are kind of over, kind of. So they like that, make you legitimately rich, because that's the first thing on their minds is stealing money. And the second thing I said, it'll make you internationally famous. Okay, rich, famous, on the cover of every magazine in the world in a favorable light, which is pretty unusual for them, in a favorable light. And the third thing is the people will love you. Rich, famous, and loved. Come on, what else you want? I can't give you a body like Brad Pitt, but that's pretty good. So they all want to listen. I mean, what's wrong with listening? So the brig listens, and, and it just flew over his head. And the words that he said to me that I remember were, Douglas, I need money. What can you do to make me wealthy? So anyway, we spent more time together, And it really fell apart when I met his Minister of Finance, who was obviously a rich guy. He was the deep state, a level under, and he didn't like this idea at all. I mean, what's in it for me, is what he's asking himself. Well, there would have been a lot in it for him, but anyway, didn't want to rock the boat, which was kind of stupid, because after Transkei or Ciskei was absorbed back into South Africa, I'm sure he got a big nothing. And anyway, subsequently, I kind of tracked Gauzo later. He served time in a South African prison for running drugs. He really did want money, but he wasn't very smart. Then, the most fun I had, and this almost the closest I came. I think the closest I came. Well, the second closest maybe. It's hard to say. I'll tell you about the other thing in a moment. Was Suriname. And this is interesting how that story started. There was another one of these mercenary types that I knew well, named Patrick O'Connor, who was started out with Air America in Vietnam. And these guys just can't get it out of their blood. So he calls me up, and he says, listen, you want to meet me in Dallas Airport? Because I'm going to meet a guy about what he wanted to do was train a Praetorian Guard for the commander. Desi Boudersey was his name. And Patrick was looking to get the contract to train the Praetorian Guard, because as it was, the army of Suriname was dragging its rifles around by their barrels. I mean, they didn't, they weren't very spit and polish. So he says, yeah, I'm going to meet this guy in the Dallas airport. You want to come along? Because he's on the other side of the situation. I said, sign me up. So we meet at the Dallas airport. He's in London at that time. And we meet there a day or so later, whatever it was. And it's a guy named Ted Bishop. And so I'm just sitting there after Patrick introduces me, and they're talking, and it's pretty obvious. What Ted's deal was he was trying to cut a deal with the British, French, American, and Dutch governments to help him stage an attack, a coup on Boudersey, who was considered to be a very bad boy. And and he was interesting. He was I'm forgetting part of the story. So Patrick says over the phone to me, says, yeah, this guy Ted Bishop, he calls me up, because here, word spreads quickly in this community. And Patrick's an American Irishman. He's both. And he's imitating Ted's voice to me on the phone. He says, yeah, this guy calls me and says, Mr. O'Connor, I understand we may be on the opposite side of a little situation down in South America. And I thought that was really a lot of color. So anyway, it turns out that's just the way Ted talked. But when the two of them talked about what they wanted to do, they were on the opposite side of the situation. One wants to train the army, and the other one wants to overthrow the army. So they're obviously but they didn't care. They could have switched. I mean, it didn't matter. I mean, it was completely academic and important. And so Ted's wondering what I'm doing there after a while, because I wasn't saying much. And I said, Ted, listen, after you do the number on this little country, you're going to be right back in the same situation where you are right now. I mean, you can loot and steal, maybe you can get a few mining concessions, but you can be back on the road looking for the next number. I got a plan for you. So I explained the plan to Ted. I said, look, basically what I'd hatched earlier today, I said, what we do is we form a corporation and we give shares to every man, woman, and child in the country. pro rata. Everybody, the baby, the grandmother, they all get an equal number of shares. Well, most of these people don't know what shares are, but the nice thing about the computer revolution is it can be in their account, even if they don't really understand it. And that's 70% of the shares. And let's say 10% of the shares we put in trust for the next generation yet unborn. Prudent, you want to defuse a time bomb if you can. And we take 10% and pass it out to people that are of significant help to the corporation. Well, the people that need to be paid off, or they're going to stop it from happening. Maybe more than 10, it doesn't matter, I don't care. And I got to get paid too. And then the last 10%, or maybe 5%, we take public in New York and London and everywhere else. And what are the assets of the corporation? Now this is where it's interesting. 100% of all the government's assets. That's a good way to get rid of the government. Now they don't have any assets. They're all in a corporation. It's power to the people. Marxists that are sincere kind of like this, power to the people. The people actually own these assets tangibly, not just theoretically. And they have liquid value because the shares are publicly traded. You can see what they are. And people want the shares to go up in value. And it's a good way to get rid. The problem that you encounter with this stuff is you got the parliament or the Congress, you got these high-level bureaucrats. They don't want to lose their jobs because you're going to abolish. You get, like in Suriname, there are 400,000 people in that country. I know, because I met the Minister of Economy and we were talking. I asked the Minister of Economy, I said, so how many employees does your ministry have, Mr. Minister? He says, we have about 1,500. This is a country with no economy. The Ministry of the Economy's got 1,500 employees. This is typical. Okay. So you got to have something for these guys to do. So what you do with these guys, since they're usually better educated and more presentable than the average bear, you send them out as ambassadors to all the foreign countries and, more importantly, foreign corporations to tell them that Suriname is open for business. Go to Hitachi and Yamaha and BP and God knows everybody. That's what these guys would do. And they'd like that, lots of expensive meals and big hotel suites. They love that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what happens. And what's a country about the size of Georgia with huge, but more or less unknown natural resources worth? Well, how many billions do you want to count? And anyway, the resources aren't what's important anyway. Hong Kong's got zero resources, but it's worth a lot. And it's hard to sell that to these people, but you try to give them some education in economics, which they don't have any understanding of. Anyway, so that's the deal that I pitched to them. There's something in it for you, Mr. President. You get legitimately rich, loved, and internationally famous. And one of the reasons that people are going to love you is because they all get shares. The government kind of ceases to exist because it serves no useful purpose anymore. And of course, you got to letter the stock so that the people can't immediately blow it out and get a new Toyota and go on a couple of weekend binges, which most of them would do. There's ways of solving these problems. So anyway, what did I do? I spent a month in Suriname. A month, that's a long time. There's nothing there in Paramaribo. And what was I doing? I was talking 12 hours a day to everybody in that country. All the politicians, the religious people, people that run athletic organizations, labor union leaders, rich guys, everybody. I was a busy guy. And then, after a while, it became more apparent to me. Suriname, with only 400,000 people, has 7 different and highly mutually antagonistic racial groups. You got the Bush Negroes, you got the Indians, who are substantial, you got the Chinese, who run the commercial everything in the country, you've got the mulattoes. The Bush Negroes still live out in the jungle. The mulattoes are the other big group, along with the East Indians. You got a certain number of Europeans, and I'm forgetting who else, but none of them get along. And then you got, Indonesians. That's the other big group, Indonesians. They're the third big group, lots of them. So none of them, and then you got 3 different religious groups. The Indonesians are all Mohammedans, and the mulattoes are all Christians, and I guess the Europeans Europeans don't believe in religion anymore, so they don't count anyway. And the Indians are Hindus. So these people hate each other. It's a snake pit. And so it was impossible to get anything organized. So I figured the only way I can get this thing going is I got to go top down and bottom up at the same time. So what did I do? I called libertarian friends of mine that were successful. Not too many libertarians fit that qualification, and presentable. That cut the group even more. And I called them up. I said, look, I've got something down there. I will finance it. What I'm going to do is buy full-page newspaper ads and television ads and radio ads where we tell the people what they're going to get. They're going to own the country. They're going to be wealthy, blah, blah, blah. It'll be saleable. And what I need is they don't need to hear this just from me, one guy. They need to hear it from other credible-looking people. That's better when you hear it from more than one person. So, meanwhile, I'd be working on Boudersey, the president, because I spent a lot of time with him. It was very interesting going to parties with him. He was quite an entertainer. He's president again now, incidentally, and under indictment for murder and drug trafficking, but that's another story. So, anyway, I call up my friends, and I heard every bullshit excuse you can imagine. Gee, isn't it dangerous? No. The university will never let me off for 2 weeks. It has to be during my summer vacation. It was just hopeless. And at that point, I was further confirmed in the general worthlessness of libertarians as compadres in any kind of an interesting venture. So anyway, I left it there. And since then, and I could go back there, actually. I mean, I could go back and talk to Boudersey, but I don't think it would serve any useful purpose now. Anyway, kind of been there, done that. So what's happened since then? More recently, where did I go? Oh, I know. There was a lady that subscribed to my newsletter who was a big fan of mine. And she told me, I met her in Argentina, and she said, you don't remember, but 10 years ago, I told you that I was going to go to the Solomon Islands and change my life. And I probably reacted like, that's kind of jumping off the deep end, isn't it? I mean, they still crucify geologists to go walking around out there. That's headhunter country, it really is. So the big island is Guadalcanal in the Solomons, and there are hundreds of others. So anyway, she comes back 10 years later after she says she met me and says, look, I'm the best buddy of the newly elected president. I've told him all about you. I've told him all about, what you want to do, blah, 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 blah. I want you to go there with me and we'll pitch him on this. I said, well, sign me up. That's interesting. And I thought, it would really be fun. I might as well make this, since I've done this enough that I need some added ingredients. So in preparation for this, and this would have been a mistake, but this is showing you I'm not taking this shit seriously anymore, because I pretty much know the drill. I know what happens. And I thought, I'm in this to amuse myself. this is to entertain me. So I talked to John McAfee, who was a wild card. I said, John, you want to come on this? He said, absolutely. And James Altucher, who's is crazy as any Jew in New York, I promise you, but also is smart. And he says, yeah, I want to. He hasn't been out of Manhattan for the last 30 years, but he said he wanted to. And P.J. O'Rourke, who of course makes a specialty out of going to weird countries and writing about them, he wanted to come. But then it turns out that she couldn't make the sale with the president. Well, she did make the sale with the president, but all of his advisors, his little deep state, his crappy little deep state, like a thousandth the size of the one here in the US, maybe a 10,000th, there's not many people there, talked him out of it. They said, listen, this guy's just going to be trouble. The IMF hears that you're talking about blah, 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 So I didn't do that. And, Palau, that's the other place. There was an oil company that really stupid. They were looking for oil in Palau. It made no sense. Well, you can never tell where you're going to find oil. But so I met the president of Palau, and I went there twice. And, we did a YouTube together, and I did the whole drill, talking to everybody and seeing everybody on the island. Only 15,000 people in the country of Palau, which incidentally is a member of the UN. And I was even talking to a law firm in Washington that I know about helping them sell their vote for a lot of money to Red China, because right now they sell it to Taiwan. That's what these little countries do. It's a major source of income. You got a big country that needs to vote in the UN. Who the hell knows why? But they think it's important. And anyway, that kind of fell through. But now I spend a lot of time in Uruguay, and so all my friends are good friends of the president, and the new president is a moderate socialist, kind of free market oriented for a socialist. So I'll get to meet him, and it'll just be fun to hang around, but it won't go anywhere. There's all kinds of reasons why a libertarian anarchy is going to be very, very, very hard to start anywhere for all kinds of reasons. And I've just told you my personal experiences and skated over the surface of it all. So that's about all that I wanted to say to you. What did I promise you? I told you I'd tell you about my adventures trying to overthrow third world governments. Okay, mission accomplished. So anybody got any questions? I got 15 minutes. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything on your notepad that maybe you forgot?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
Were you successful with your hobby?
Well, it's been one of my hobbies. It's not my only hobby.
Repeat the question.
Oh, what was the question?
Where were you?
Oh, where was I successful with this hobby? I wasn't successful anywhere. That was what my whole speech was about. I haven't been successful with it. It's a hobby. I haven't made any money from it. Although, I always am looking for that's plan B. Plan A. Plan B is figure out a way to loot and pillage. If you can. These countries are all corrupt, and it's all about theft, and but it takes time. You got to live there. It's like when I was in Palau. I became buddies with the president's best friend, who was an American, incidentally. The president himself had been to Harvard. He was a very well-educated guy. And he said, look, I'll tell you what's going to happen. And I knew this, but it was nice to hear him say this. He says, as soon as you go down to the airport, and they'll come down there and they'll wave by and, come back, all this. But we have something here called the wheels up syndrome. And as soon as they see the wheels on that plane go up, they're going to forget about everything and go back to picking bananas and coconuts again. Like this has never existed. And of course he was absolutely right. So no, of course it hasn't been successful. If you want to make a success out of something like this, a nonviolent revolution, because Violent revolutions are messy, they're not fun, they're dangerous. I'm too old for that anyway. You gotta camp out there, and you gotta hold these people's hands, and so this is entertainment. It's not serious. I know there's people trying to start new libertarian countries now. I know about that, but it's not going to work. Let's see, you first, sir, then second.
Did you dive when you were in Palau? Did you do any diving?
I did, as a matter of fact. I went diving. I've been a diver for most of my life. I've dived all over the world, but I hadn't dived in Palau. And I got to dive several sites. I mean, we went on our shark dive. We dived in this one place where in those 1930s movies, which they don't show anymore, where the little native boy gets his foot caught in the giant clam, so did those. It was wonderful diving, fantastic, among the best in the world. Did you do that?
It's the best in the world. I want to go.
It probably is. It's close, if not the best. Yes, sir.
During your adventures, where is your wife, your partner? Do you bring her along, or?
Sometimes. I like to bring her along sometimes. Sometimes. She came to Palau because she's got an IQ of about 150. She's a lawyer and is wired to think about the angles, and she's an MBA, so she's always thinking angles. And it's nice to have somebody like that with you that takes the shit seriously. I don't. I treat it like Mr. Toad's Wild Adventure. So she went to Palau with me. Where else did she go? She went to Siskai with me, but she didn't meet Gauzo. Anyway, yeah, sometimes. But you travel faster when you travel alone. You really do. So, yes, sir.
When's the next adventure with Charles Knight?
Just before I came over here, the third novel, which is going to be really good, is Assassin, as you may know. And this is where Charles, coming off of Drug Lord, where they stole another fortune from him, decides, you know what, there's some people that just need killing. And so that's why he becomes an assassin. So this book is all about taking out high government officials, the techniques, the morality, very important. Is it right or wrong to kill people? Well, I can build some pretty good arguments why maybe it's not wrong, or maybe it's right, at least. And also the history, a lot of revisionist history of, was killing Caesar or Lincoln or Archduke Ferdinand or Kennedy. So there's some of that integrated. It's going to be a very good book. You're going to enjoy it. And then, of course, Charles is accused of being a terrorist, and then things get really interested in the book. It'll be out in July this year. Terrorist the year after that. Don't wait for the movie. When they make a movie, these things, they always screw it up. Okay. Oh, one more.
Have you ever felt that the adventures that you're going to end up in a prison somewhere, or worse, grave?
In these really backward third world countries, most places are not dangerous. All this stuff about it's dangerous. No, that's mostly bullshit. It can be. I mean, in Africa, the real danger is not the people, it's the soldiers. I mean, because all the crimes and everything, they're basically committed by soldiers, and they're all, God, some of these droopy-eyed teenagers that they put in uniforms with guns, these kids are capable of anything. I mean, they are total thugs. So you got to look out for them. But if you're a white man dressed in a suit, you're probably okay, because they know if something bad happens they'll probably get killed themselves. It's like, but these countries are out of control. It's like in Haiti in the 70s. It was the safest place in the world. You could walk down the street in Port-au-Prince, which was a very nice city then. There were only 3 million people on the island in those days, or in Haiti, I should say. And nobody would touch you. You were perfectly safe. Now, I hate to say any place is actually dangerous, but Port-au-Prince, they'll kill you. I mean, in a New York second. It's a dangerous place. I was there a couple years ago. Oh, I forgot to mention Haiti. 16 countries. See what happens when you don't write this shit down? Good. I'm glad you jogged my memory. I'll add that in there.
What do you think about Venezuela?
It's hopeless. It's completely hopeless. The reason it's hopeless is they've got all that oil. And when you've got one source of income for the government, and these people have picked up so many bad habits over the years, I just don't see how that place can work out. I mean, yeah, I've thought, well, you can go down there, and if you can get good title, which you probably can't, you can buy a giant estancia out in the countryside. It's a big country, but all the cattle have probably been killed, and the buildings have fallen into disrepair, and, it's just going to be a nightmare. Listen, I bought land in South America in normal countries, and it's hard enough, believe me. I mean, no, it's just too tough. Most things are just not the trouble of doing it, frankly. If you want to make money, I'll tell you what you do. You find a cheap stock that's going to go up 10 times in price, and you can save yourself a lot of trouble. Well, easier said than done, okay? But that's the best way to make money. Yeah.
So, just besides the investing in a stock and the low fleet 10x, any other bullet points as far as advice on profiting from collapses? Summaries or...
Well, I think the whole world's going into collapse, frankly. I really do. And if I was 30 years old and I wanted to make a lot of money, no question I'd go to Africa. No question, for all kinds of reasons. Because if you want to make money, you don't want a level playing field. To hell with level playing fields. I want to be on an on-level playing field. And you go to Africa, you're unusual, you got experience and knowledge and connections and money none of the locals have. You go to most countries in Africa, you can be sitting down, if you're clever, you can be sitting down talking to the president within a month, sometimes within a week. So that's what you want to do to make money. As far as investment advice, well, you missed my speech yesterday about you can profit from the coming collapse of Western civilization. So, although I didn't have any answers there either. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I'll give you another tip. If you don't want to go off the deep end to Africa, I'd go to Uzbekistan, which nobody goes to still, but is moving in the right direction, pretty obviously. And I like the Ukraine a lot. I really do. And there's obviously opportunities for corruption there, and corruption is an excellent way to make money in these countries. Forget about legitimate business. You get into legitimate business, you got to bribe people. I could tell you really fun stories about that, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I mean, you go to those countries, you don't want to build, you want to steal. That's really, when in Rome, do what the Romans do.